Welcome to Norway Perspectives, the essential guide for navigating your new life, brought to you by the experts at Norway Relocation Group. For many who move here, Norway is a dream, a land of stunning fjords, progressive values, and a high quality of life. The initial months can feel like a honeymoon phase, where the beauty and efficiency of the country are on full display. But beneath this welcoming surface lies a complex, highly digitized, and deeply integrated civic system. And today, we're going to address a question that many newcomers think about, but few take seriously enough until it's too late. Do I really need to learn Norwegian? We're not just going to give you the simple answer, which is yes. We're going to pull back the curtain and show you in forensic detail what happens when you don't. This isn't an episode about grammar or passing a test. This is about the real world, cascading consequences of not learning the language of the country you call home. We're talking about losing tangible access to essential public services, critically misunderstanding legal documents that define your rights and obligations, slipping into a state of dependence on others for basic life administration, watching career opportunities vanish before you even know they exist, making financially devastating mistakes with taxes, healthcare, and immigration, and ultimately facing insurmountable barriers to the security of permanent residence or citizenship. Norway is a country that prides itself on transparency and fairness, but those values are only accessible if you can understand the language in which they are communicated. The entire architecture of modern Norwegian life, from the digital mailbox Digipost to the health portal Helsenorge, from municipal notices to your child's school messages, runs on one operating system, Norwegian. So, in this episode, we'll deconstruct this challenge piece by piece. First, we'll look at what you are legally required to do in terms of language learning to secure your future here. We'll explore what true integration looks like in practice, beyond just having a job. We will walk through scenarios of what happens when you cannot decipher official letters, forms, or digital requests. We'll discuss the subtle but profound social isolation that builds when you avoid the language. We'll dismantle the myth that relying on everyone speaks English is a sustainable long-term strategy. And finally, we'll show how the consequences compound over time, financially, emotionally, and legally, creating a reality you did not plan for. Let's begin with the most common and perhaps most dangerous assumption that newcomers make. Most people who arrive, particularly in cities like Oslo or Bergen, quickly conclude, everyone in Norway speaks English, so I'll be fine. On the surface, this observation is partially true. Norway consistently ranks among the top non-native English-speaking countries in the world. In urban areas, many Norwegians, especially those under 50, speak excellent, often fluent English. In customer service roles, in international companies, in restaurants, or among academic colleagues, it's often entirely possible to get by day to day without speaking a word of Norwegian. But here's the trap, and it's a crucial one. Being able to get by is not the same as being able to build a stable, independent, and secure life. When you first arrive, everything might feel surprisingly manageable. You can order a coffee, navigate the supermarket, speak to your landlord, and maybe your boss and closest colleagues communicate with you in English. This creates a powerful illusion of control and integration. But behind the scenes of these simple daily transactions, all of Norway's official systems, healthcare, education, taxation, banking, housing, and immigration, continue to operate almost exclusively in Norwegian. This isn't out of stubbornness. It's because these are national systems built for a population where Norwegian is the shared official language. Over time, if you don't actively learn to speak and read Norwegian, a gap begins to form. It starts as a small crack but widens into a chasm, separating you from the very systems designed to support you. Let's take a closer look at how that gap becomes a barrier, starting with the first place it appears for most people. Start with your mailbox, or more accurately, your digital postbox. In Norway, once you have a national identity number and a bank ID, your secure digital identity, you are automatically assigned a digital mailbox, either Digipost or e-box. This is not optional. This is where the state communicates with you. Skatteetaten, the tax administration, NAV, the Labor and Welfare Administration, your commune, municipality, your doctor, your child's school, and even private companies like banks and insurance providers will send you legally binding, financially critical, and time-sensitive messages. Nearly all of these messages will be in formal, administrative Norwegian, filled with bureaucratic jargon. Here are concrete, real-world scenarios that happen when you don't, or can't, read and understand them. Taxes. You receive a varsel om endring of skatt, notice of tax assessment change. You ignore it or assume it's unimportant. You miss the 3-week deadline to contest it. The change becomes final, and you are hit with a significant back tax bill plus a tilleggsskatt, penalty tax, of up to 60%. Welfare. You receive a letter from NAV requesting documentation to continue your unemployment or sickness benefits. You don't understand the request or the deadline. You fail to respond, and your payments are stopped cold, leaving you with no income. Housing. Your child's school place or kindergarten, barnehage spot, is confirmed via a letter from the commune. It requires you to digitally accept the offer by a specific date. You miss it, and your child loses their spot, sending you to the back of a year-long waiting list. Health. You receive a notice for a specialist appointment you've been waiting months for. You miss the appointment because you didn't understand the notification, and you are charged a no-show fee of over 1,000 kroner. Debt. You receive a purring reminder for an unpaid bill, followed by an inkassovarsel debt collection notice. Because you don't recognize the terms, you ignore them. The debt escalates with fees, is registered against your name, and suddenly you find you are denied a mortgage or a simple phone contract because of your poor credit rating. This isn't rare. It's not theoretical. This is happening every single day to well-intentioned, intelligent people who thought they could just speak English and be fine. Next, let's talk about your professional life, your career. You might have successfully found a job in Norway without speaking much Norwegian. This is common, especially in high-demand sectors like IT, engineering, or in fields like hospitality, logistics, or cleaning. But here is what most people discover within the first 1 to 2 years: a language-based glass ceiling forms above them. Promotions and opportunities. Promotions are overwhelmingly given to people who can communicate fluently with Norwegian-speaking clients, customers, and partners. The person who can lead a meeting, write a report, or charm a client in their native tongue will always have the edge. Internal culture. While your immediate team might use English, internal company-wide memos, strategic documents, training materials, and all-hands meetings will gradually, or sometimes abruptly, shift to Norwegian. You become the person who always needs a summary, an exception, marking you as separate from the core team. Contracts and safety. Your employment contract, the company's HR policies, and crucial safety guidelines, HMS, Helse, Miljø, og Sikkerhet, are legally binding in their Norwegian versions. Translations are often provided as a courtesy, but are not always available or accurate. In a dispute, it is the Norwegian text that holds up in court. Job security. In times of economic difficulty, restructuring, or layoffs, employees who are not integrated into the company's primary language are often seen as less versatile and, frankly, more expendable. They are frequently among the first to be let go. We've worked with highly skilled professionals, engineers, analysts, project managers, who have seen their careers stall. They were passed over for team lead positions simply because they couldn't confidently participate in a management meeting or read a complex safety protocol in Norwegian. Your career may become stuck, not because you lack the skills, but because you lack the key to the room where decisions are made. Now let's talk about something even more personal: your children. If you have children in the Norwegian school or kindergarten system, the language barrier moves from an inconvenience to a critical point of failure. You are expected to be an active, engaged parent, and the system for that engagement is Norwegian. You need to be able to read daily, weekly, and monthly announcements on platforms like Visma in School or Schooler. Understand and digitally sign permission forms for field trips. Decipher behavioral reports or detailed learning assessments about your child's progress and potential struggles. Respond coherently to digital messages from teachers and school administrators. When parents consistently fail to respond or seem to misunderstand, schools don't always interpret this as a language barrier. They can interpret it as a lack of engagement or parental neglect. In serious, repeated cases, a school's concern, bekymringsmelding, can even be reported to Barnevernet, Child Welfare Services, not because the parent is malicious, but because they failed to act on vital information they couldn't understand. Furthermore, children are incredibly perceptive. They notice when their parents can't help with homework, can't chat with other parents at pickup, or sit silently and confused through a parent-teacher conference, foreldresamtale. This can create stress and shame for the child, who may feel they have to act as the family translator, a burden no child should carry. This directly affects how well your child adjusts, both socially and academically. What about your health? In Norway, your entire healthcare journey is documented and managed through the national health portal, Helsenorge. No. This is where you find your test results, referrals to specialists, appointment confirmations, vaccination records, and your complete medical history, patient journal. Yes, your doctor, fastlege, will likely speak excellent English during your 15-minute consultation. But the system that supports that doctor does not. If you don't log into Helsenorge, or if you can't read what the system says, you may miss an urgent referral to a cardiologist or oncologist, letting a critical health window close. You may not be able to renew a vital prescription, fornai recept, because you didn't see the doctor's message. You may not realize what vaccines your children have received or have missed, compromising their health. You will be charged for missed appointments you never even knew were scheduled. And in an emergency, imagine the terror of not being able to explain your symptoms accurately, or worse, not being able to fully understand what a doctor is telling you about a diagnosis, medication, or life-saving treatment. Your care could be delayed or compromised at the moment you need it most. Now we arrive at the most serious consequences of all, the legal and immigration outcomes. Norway offers pathways to permanent residency, permanent oppholdstillatelse, and citizenship, statsborgerskap, the keys to a truly stable and secure life here. But both are conditional on proven integration, and language is the primary measure of that integration. For most adult applicants, you are legally required to complete a mandatory number of hours of approved Norwegian language classes, norskopplæring, pass a certified Norwegian language test at a minimum level, usually A2, sometimes B1. In many cases, also complete a social studies course, samfunnskunnskap, and pass the final test in Norwegian. These are not suggestions. They are hard, non-negotiable legal requirements. If you do not complete these requirements, or if you procrastinate and wait too long, you may be found ineligible for permanent residence, even if you have lived and worked in Norway for years. Without permanent residency, your right to stay in Norway is fragile, perpetually dependent on your specific job, your relationship status, or your student visa. One layoff, one breakup, and your entire life in Norway could be jeopardized. We have seen families forced to leave the country they love, not because they didn't work hard, contribute, or follow the rules, but because they failed to meet the language requirement in time, and their temporary permit could not be renewed. Finally, let's talk about the consequences that don't show up on paper, but that you feel every single day. The emotional consequences. Not learning Norwegian affects more than your paperwork or your income. It profoundly affects how you feel about yourself, your independence, your relationships, and your ability to truly build a life here. When you avoid the language, a pattern of dependence and avoidance sets in. You rely on your partner, a kind colleague, or a Norwegian friend to translate your important documents, making you feel like a burden. You feel a spike of anxiety every time the phone rings with an unknown number, so you hesitate to answer. You avoid going to the commune, NAV, or even the doctor on your own, losing your sense of autonomy. You miss out on the small, everyday moments that build a community. The chat with a neighbor at a dugnad, communal workday. The joke shared with the cashier. The local parent group on Facebook. You remain on the periphery of social circles, an observer rather than a participant. Over time, you can feel profoundly isolated, dependent, and stuck in a permanent state of survival mode. You are physically present in Norway, but socially and culturally absent. Many people who don't learn Norwegian eventually confess the same heartbreaking sentiment. I'm here, but I don't feel like I really live here. And that feeling matters more than anything. After hearing all this, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. But this episode is not meant to discourage you. It's meant to empower you. The good news is that it's never too late to start, even if you've lived in Norway for 5 years and feel embarrassed to begin. Even if your schedule is packed with work and family commitments, even if you've tried a language app before and stopped, you can start again today. You don't have to become a fluent, perfect Norwegian speaker overnight. The goal is not perfection. The goal is agency. Every single word you learn gives you power. The power to read your own letters and understand your own finances. The power to confidently reply to your child's teacher. The power to understand your doctor and advocate for your own health. The power to apply for a better job and build a real career. The power to secure permanent residence and build a future without fear. And the power to say yes to an invitation, yes to a conversation, instead of, I don't understand. Not learning Norwegian doesn't just hold you back. Over time, it systematically and inevitably shuts you out of the very systems that make life in Norway secure, fair, and possible. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to begin.